Hello again everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Will, and today we're taking a look at just how broken my Barn Find Maestro is. So for those of you who haven't watched the first video in the series, I'll give you a little bit of a recap. I got this 1990 Austin Maestro. It had been sitting for 19 years, undriven and untouched. It's got 40,000 miles on the clock, and we're basically going to be doing a whole heap of recommissioning to get it back onto the road. But obviously with a car that has sat for a long time, you're going to have a long list of things that need repairing. So let's go through some of those things today, and I'll show you some of the bits I've already done since the last video off camera. So once again, we have the car in all its glory. By the way, I don't know if I said, the car's name is Fred, which is a homage to the original one only owner of the car, who was an older gentleman who passed away, I think, a few years ago. And it just seemed like a nice name for the car, so we've called him Fred. Since the last time you've seen it, I have installed a door handle. However, it has since stopped working. So unfortunately, the door handle doesn't work, and the reason for that is because it was slightly cracked on the plastic clip which the metal mechanism goes into. I knew this when putting it in because it actually came from my other Maestro. In a weird bit of timing, my original Maestro that you saw me driving in the last video was actually pretty much destined for the scrap heap, unfortunately, because I had done a lot of digging into it over the winter just before I got this car, and found out that it had a lot more rot than I thought, that all the floors underneath are rotten. It had been undersealed and had a lot of hidden poor repairs, and it was going to be so much money to put it right that it just wasn't worth it, given the fact that I then also found out the car was a Category C write-off, which I didn't know when I was purchasing. So yeah, that wouldn't have been a problem, the Cat C, had the car not been totally rotten. And amazingly, it was one of those places where you just wouldn't have picked it up on an MOT, which is a bit of a shame. But nevertheless, the original Maestro is donating some of its parts to the vehicle, and it's just so funny that I managed to stumble across another one just as I was thinking about what I was to do with the existing one. So I will need to pull another one of the door handles off my parts car, which will be fine. I'm going to be doing that soon, and then that will fix that problem again, and hopefully forever. I have also put a fuel cap on the car because I took that from the other vehicle as well, because this one was missing where the little tow rags that tried to steal the car basically ripped it off and broke it. This little bit of plastic trim here is also from the other car, and so are the wheels and tyres, as you may have noticed. So on the previous car, early last year, 2022, when I got it on the road, I put 4 brand new tyres on it, basically, because of safety and things along that line. The tyres on that were very old. The tyres on this car were even older. They had date codes of, I think it was about 2001 or something like that, so they were very, very old, and they would have been no good for the road. And because I had the other wheels and tyres, it just made sense to pop that onto the car to get it up and rolling and to get it legal. And you know, obviously they're Maestro wheels, so it kind of goes with the car. I just need to find the correct 14-inch hubcaps now from a Maestro Clubman or Montego of the same era. So if you know somebody, or you happen to have the correct hubcaps for the car, please get in touch with me, because I am looking to make it look correct rather than the aftermarket hubcaps, basically. And the only other thing I've done is put a chrome exhaust tip on the car. Well, a chrome exhaust tip on the car, which I had on the side pipe of my other Maestro, just because the exhaust is a bit rusty. Okay, so things are starting to get a little bit serious now, to the point that I have actually written an entire list out in notes on my iPad, and we're going to go through some of those things today. So we have a few sections of what I need to focus on the car in order to get it ready for an MOT. We have electrics, because some of the electrics aren't working 100%. We've got that fuel tank sending unit for the fuel gauge on the dashboard. That does not work at all. And in the end, I actually managed to get out of the car about, I'd probably say 15 litres of fuel, which had gone bad. So even though the gauge on the dash was reading nothing, there was definitely fuel in there. But that is all out of the system now, so that is good. That means I'm going to be able to drop the tank, and the fuel system is what I'm going to be concentrating on in the next video in the series. We've got to go through the entire cooling system. Now, because the car has been sat so long, a lot of the rubber components and a lot of the gaskets in the cooling system and things like that have just totally gone. For instance, the heater matrix leaks, and fortunately for me, it's not because the fins or the radiator, or should I say the actual heater core is damaged. It is just a gasket which goes between the actual heater hose metal kind of pipes and into the matrix unit itself. Now, you'd think that would be easy to sort out. You just get a little gasket and you just replace it. But no, that gasket does not exist anymore. I've been speaking on the Maestro, Metro and Montego enthusiast group on Facebook and a couple of other places. And while people did point me into the links to the right places to get it, the suppliers don't have it. So I'm going to have to pull that apart and figure out if it can be O-ringed, figure out if I can use a sealer or something like that to get that kind of sorted and stop it leaking, because I would like to retain heat. Speaking of heat, the fan doesn't work, the interior fan. I think I know why. It looks like it's because somebody had actually, when they were trying to steal the car, ripped the fan switch out of the connector and has actually broken it. Well, actually, that is the reason why, let's be honest, because the switch connects to nothing. So I need to find a switch for that, and I need to actually just verify that all the wiring is working with a multimeter, and then probably use a little bit of wire to jump it and test it and make sure that works. Obviously, with the rest of the cooling system, I'm going to need to flush it out totally, replace the thermostat, replace all the gaskets for the thermostat housing. I'm going to do a water pump on it, and I'm going to replace the radiator as well. Now, the radiator for these cars is another really hard to find item. Earlier on in 2022, in my previous Maestro, I replaced the radiator because the radiator was leaking. I managed to find one radiator, and now they are no longer in stock anywhere, just at all. So you can't get them, or if you do get them, you can only get the kind of the wrong size one from Rimmer Bros. But even then, the prices on that have gone astronomical now. All in a year, just like it's gone up £40. So fortunately, I have a cooling fan, a radiator, new radiator hoses, and a new coolant crossover pipe for the bottom section of the cooling system, which always rots away and always goes, and that ends up leaving you stranded on the side of the road with a whole load of coolant just missing and overheating. With that, of course, I'm going to do the water pump on the engine. It seems to be working fine now, but it's like if you're going to do the whole system, you're going to go for a refresh, you might as well do that. So that is going to include all new radiator hose clips for all the hoses, new ones, because the old ones that are on there are so rusty and rotten, you know that they're just going to let go and cause a leak. And I can't remember if I mentioned it, but that obviously includes a new fan. I put a new slimline electric fan on the previous vehicle, which I'm going to bring over to here, because the cooling fan on this was actually completely stuck when I got in it. That was one of the things which didn't work. When I had it running after I rebuilt the carburetor, which I didn't film and I didn't show just because over the Christmas period and with all the the cold weather that was going on, I just kind of wanted to get it done because I really needed to know if the engine was healthy or not. But with that done, once I actually got the engine started and running, I noticed that the temperature was starting to creep up because the cooling fan wasn't kicking in. And it turned out it had been blowing cooling fan fuses. But what I needed to do to get that running was pretty simple. I just needed to actually grab the fan manually and start moving it and freeing off the stuck motor. So I'm assuming that's something that was a symptom of the car sitting. But, you know, I've got the new fan. That'll be going on anyway. So let's get on to the braking system. Now, spoiler alert, I have moved the car slightly around the car park on the little kind of temporary fuel tank that I've got and was shown in the last video. And it has no brakes whatsoever. So obviously what's happened here is the fluid in that has probably taken up water, and it just will not kind of do its job anymore, and it will need bleeding, it will need flushing out. I have got new brake discs, I've got new brake pads, I have got new rear wheel cylinders, I have got rubber brake hoses. I'm going to buy a rebuild kit and I'm going to rebuild the master cylinder, and then obviously pretty much it'll be completely flushed through, changed, and kind of restored and made safe. Now, this is one of those things I knew I'd expect when I bought the car, is that because it's been sitting for so long, there are going to be things that do not work. So let's talk about what's happening in the engine bay. So as previously mentioned, I have rebuilt the carburetor. I did do that off camera because of time constraints, weather, and just generally needing to hear the thing run for my own sanity. But what I did do was I did film a little video of me giving it that first start again after I had got the carburetor rebuilt, and what I'll do is I'll insert that clip now so you can have a little look. Okay, so it's starting to get a little dark today, but since I've slapped the carb on, I have to just give it a try and see if it will fire over. So you may notice that I'm missing the in-between plate where the heat shielding bit would go round. That is because the heat shielding is just completely broken and I have to rebuild that and do something else. I've got enough spare gaskets so I can whip the carb off. It's only 4 13mm bolts. It's not really that hard to do. But I just really want to see it run. I really want to hear it do something, see if it gets up to temperature, things like that, and just kind of get an idea of what else we've got to do to the engine, really. So I've had this attached for a few minutes. There's no leaks from the carb. All the linkages are back on. So let's pull the choke out a little bit and just see if it fires and if it runs. Smooth and beautiful is that? Oh. So we've obviously got a slight problem with the idle there. Right, so I clearly need to have a little play with the idle screw and the fuel mixture screw because that's not right. But fortunately, it's not leaking any fuel, so that's good. I'm just going to have a little play and just make sure there's no vacuum leaks and just see how we end up getting it running. So as you might have been able to hear in the video, we do have a slight exhaust leak. Now, it's coming from the downpipe, unfortunately, which is a very rare and very hard to find item. However, I happen to have one from the parts car, which is in perfect condition. So that is something I'll be popping on when I do some of the engine service and general exhaust work in another one of the videos. So some other things I'm going to do to the engine, just to get a general idea of its health, is I'm going to give the engine a compression test, just see how healthy it is. I'm going to do the valve clearances because it's been sat so long, they all need doing. Even though it doesn't sound tappety or anything like that, it's just a good idea to give them a go over and a double check. I'm going to be doing a rocker cover gasket. I'm going to be doing a sump gasket. I'm going to be doing full service air filter, oil filter, going through the full ignition system, new coil, new plugs, new leads, new distributor cap, new rotor arm, and basically have it so the whole thing is refreshed and ready to go. I'm also going to be replacing the mechanical fuel pump on the vehicle. The main reason being is they tend to have these little diaphragms in them, which with age can tear and rupture, and then you can end up with fuel basically in your engine oil and your engine hydrolocking because all the fuel is being dumped in there, and obviously we don't want that. So for a £30 part or whatever it is, 30, 35, something like that, it's well worth doing. And that is something we'll do in the video where I go over the replacing and sorting out the fuel system. I've already got the fuel lines, I've already got the new clamps. I just need to pull the tank. And once we get the actual vehicle running on its own steam, on its own fuel tank, then it'll be a lot easier to just go, okay, next step, let's move on from there. So speaking of getting the vehicle running and getting it into a state where we can kind of test it and move it about a little bit, I have attached my little temporary fuel tank system and I have got it plumbed into the carb, and because of gravity it is just high enough where the actual outlet is higher than the inlet of the carb, so the fuel is flowing and it is running off that. So obviously this isn't something which you want to keep permanently, and it doesn't move, it won't fall out of the vehicle, but I do have a fire extinguisher, but it's only going to be temporary. In the next few weeks, we will be sorting out the fuel system, so that won't be a permanent fixture. I am possibly going to swap out the alternator because I've got a year-old or so alternator from my other car, and it's so easy to swap over. Even though it is producing charge, I have checked, it will charge the battery. It's like, if you've got a new one, you might as well do it. Same with belts. I've got a brand new auxiliary drive belt. And yet again, as mentioned with the water pump previously, I will be changing that out. Now, it will need a few other things, general miscellaneous bits and bobs, like I will need to lubricate all the gear linkages. I'm going to go over all the electrical earth points and things like that. Just check that out. Obviously got to drain this old washer fluid out, change that, make sure the pumps are working. I have fitted a battery to it now, which actually works and holds charge. This is from my other Maestro. So as I said, having a parts car has made this job a whole lot easier. So on the rest of the list of jobs to do, we have the interior. Now we're going to need to remove the interior. We're going to need to clean all the carpets. I might even take the carpets out completely, wet vax them, the seats, the whole lot. The headliner needs something doing with, because as you can see here, it's just a smidgen saggy. So I'm probably going to have to learn how to recover that, or see if that can be glued back down or something along those lines. That is something, of course, for another video. And now we have a lot of the other miscellaneous things to do. We need to go through and check over all the lights, make sure all the switches work. I need to put new wiper blades on it. I said I need to check the electrical earths, the engine bay grounds, things like that. Just make sure there's no corrosion, no problems with any of those. All the hinges, all the linkages, all of that is going to need to be lubricated, serviced and checked. Now I'm going to need to go underneath the car and check the rubber bushings and make sure they're okay, make sure there's nothing split there. I have actually had the wheels off when I swapped it anyway, and I did have a little look. I can't see any major problems and issue with the suspension. All the hubs feel tight, and I can't see any kind of leaks or anything bad there. And other than little bits of surface rust on like the control arms and stuff and the rear beam, the car just is in such good shape. I also need to get the radio fixed. The cassette player kind of works, but I have been told by somebody who knows these systems a bit better than me, VHS Chloe on Twitter. Now they work on a lot of these cassette things and stuff like that, and they've told me that it's probably going to be a bit of a pain to get working and serviced correctly, because some of the parts of them just don't exist. So as much as I want to keep my cassette player, I may move that over to a Bluetooth radio, purely because it's a bit nicer to have your own ability to stream music and also take phone calls legally in this day and age. But that's something we'll come to in another video, of course. Now, having spoken about the underside of the car, I also want to do a major bolt check, basically. I'm going to get myself a torque wrench, and I'm going to look up all the torque settings in the Haynes manuals. I'm going to make sure things like control arm bolts, ball joint bolts, the kind of the stuff for the steering, track rod ends, engine mounts, gearbox mounts, all of those stuff haven't come loose or anything like that. I'm going to make sure they're set to the right torque, because as I said, a car's been sat for so long, I also don't know who worked on it last and who did what to the vehicle last. So it makes sense, for safety's sake more than anything, just to make sure that nothing's going to fall off. So initially, that is pretty much the list of things we've got to do. I'm going to be doing it in kind of a video order. We're going to be going through the fuel system first. We're then going to be going through the cooling system as well. And then I'm going to be looking at through the engine. Having said that though, I will be changing the oil pretty sharpish, to be honest, because even though the viscosity is good, it is old oil, so that's one of the first things I do. I won't bother filming that because nobody needs to see an oil change. But once that is done, we can move on to things like water pump, fuel pump, rocker cover gaskets, making sure that's all good. And then I need to start looking at other things on the shell, like I need to give it a thoroughly deep clean in all the arches and get all the dirt and the muck off. I need to treat some of the initial bits of rust on the body. There are no holes on the car. The worst bit of rust is that little bit on the rear quarter that we showed in the last video as well, where it's got a small little bit of plating it needs there. And that is the arch I'm talking about. That is the worst bit of rust on the whole car. This one section that needs plating and this one arch that needs treating. And that is sadly because when the car was parked all those years ago, it still had mud in the arches, and obviously it had got moisture in there and that started corroding it. Had it been cleaned before it had parked, that probably wouldn't be there at all. But never mind, that's one of those things, it can be sorted. So looking underneath the car, you can see just how clean it is. This is just all little bits of kind of surface crust. But you know, it's nothing. It's just little bits of surface stuff. And what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to treat all of that. I'm not going to do that until after the MOT. I'm going to have my MOT tester, who I know fairly well, check over the car. And I don't want to underseal or hide anything away. But this is going to be a whole kind of video in itself, I guess, treating it and doing all of that properly. If you have any suggestions of what good things to treat this is with, and procedures or any ideas, hints or tips for how I'm going to treat this, the best way to do it and to stop the car from rotting, then I would really appreciate that in the comments section, because it is so clean underneath here. I want it to stay that way. But that will be done, and go over things with some paint and stuff like that, and just then check that the sunroof works. In fact, this is the last thing I'm going to do. Once we have got an MOT on the car. The success will be opening the sunroof because, yeah, the car hasn't leaked at all over winter, and that's with snow and torrential rain on it. And I just know that the first time I go to open this sunroof, I'm going to break that seal, and then it will leak forever. But we will try it at some point. We will try it at some point. Now, of course, there's something else I need to mention and go over. The last video had quite a lot of traction, actually. As it sits at the moment, the channel has gained 1,000 subscribers. The last video's had about 24,000 views nearly. So I would like to say thank you so much all for showing interest in the project and subscribing and looking to move on. But I know there's going to be a lot of you out there with a lot of good mechanical knowledge who will know cars very well as well. So my question to you is, as people who may have worked on these vehicles when they were new, I'm pretty sure in the comments section there was somebody that worked in the Cowley plant, I believe, where this would have been made. What things should I be looking out for? What things have I forgotten that I need to check on the vehicle? Because while I have a lot of knowledge about vehicles, and I have a lot of knowledge about cars in general, I like to think, I'm pretty much very self-taught, and there will be more experts out there who genuinely know things. So in the comments section below, I'm always open to ideas, hints, tips, tricks, and kind of suggestions that may be able to help us along on the build and the restoration as it goes. Now, I tell you what, you've all very kindly listened along to what we have to do for the car, but how about we go for a little test drive? I know I said the brakes didn't work, but it brakes on the handbrake, and I think we should just see, because I'm on private land, I'm on a farm here, I can legally go and do a little bit of driving. So let's see if it goes through the gears. Let's see how the suspension feels and how it kind of rides and drives, shall we? Okay, folks, let's get ready to go. So I'm pulling the choke out a little bit, and we're going to see how this thing drives. Okay, so it's running a little kind of rough at the moment. I don't know how much that is going to be due down to the massive exhaust leak, or probably the fact that it's got very old plugs in it, and the carb is bedding in. Apparently some people say that SU carbs thrive on being neglected, and a friend of mine also told me that if you give your carb about half an hour and let the car warm up, apparently it might start running better. So let's see. I've got the carb out a little bit, or the choke should I say. Now, this is something I found first is a bit sticky sometimes, hence why I might need to adjust the linkage. But, whoa, now, that was reverse. That's something we don't want to do, is it? Yet again, adjusting the linkage. But let's see. Okay, so we are going. Yeah, my foot is flat to the floor there and I've got no brakes, so we are definitely stopping with the handbrake. It's not ideal, but it does work. The clutch feels good. I don't think there's any problems with that. It engages nicely. We're into second. Throttle response seems nice. We're coming up to a speed bump now, so I'm going to have to, slow down. Bit of engine braking. Sorry that the tripod's going all over the shop. I haven't got anything to tie it kind of down to, so. Ooh. There we go. Gears feel a bit strange. As I said, I think they just need a little bit of lubrication on the linkages, but we're doing 25 miles an hour, so that's good. Down to second, bit of engine braking. Down into first. Over the speed bumps. See what she's got in second. Yeah, feels okay. The engine seems nice and healthy. Oh, we have no brakes, we have no brakes, we have no brakes, we have no brakes. Fortunately, there's nobody on this track whatsoever. So there are no small children to kill, which is good. Okay, so I'm just going to do a turn around now. And that's good, that's now holding idle, the choke's fully in. Yeah, we got a little bit of temperature into the engine. Okay, now we're in reverse. second. What I'm going to try and do now is make sure it gets in all the gears. A second. Third. And fourth. We have fourth. Doing 30 miles an hour, which with zero brakes is probably not ideal, let's be totally honest. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to spin around and we're going to get some outside shots of the car driving. It's worth noting as well that the suspension actually feels very nice and very compliant. So I don't think we've got any problems with worn shock absorbers or bad springs or anything like that. So we're doing well. Again. Yep, that's just one of those things, isn't it? It seems to be running really lovely and idling great now it's warmed up. So yeah, I guess the car's probably fine. Maybe it's just the ignition system. We'll see. We'll have a go through. But anyway, let's wrap this video up. Okay, so you join me now back in my studio / editing den, where we're gonna just wrap today's video up. Okay, so we've gone through the plans, what I need to do to the car. We've gone for a little drive. The next video will be going through the fuel system, taking the fuel tank, cleaning it out, replacing the fuel lines and things along that line. So I'm not 100% sure when the next video will be yet. Hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But you know, this channel isn't my job. This is kind of something I'm doing for fun and for enjoyment, and so everybody can have a little look at what's happening with the Maestro and the other project cars. So yeah, the Maestro isn't the only project car that's going to be featured on the channel. Some of you may remember Barney from the last video, who was in there helping me get the Maestro started initially. He's also kind of part of the channel as well, and he's going to be doing some videos on his own project car, which he's got, which we're not going to reveal just yet. The both of us are going to be doing some things regarding maybe flipping some cars, picking them up and doing them up, doing some interesting things. And as the title of the channel suggests, tatty old cars, it'll be on things that are kind of affordable for everybody and that need kind of a little bit of work doing. Nothing super expensive, nothing super fancy, just kind of enjoyable things. So yeah, if you like the sound of that, then stick about. There'll be plenty more things coming up soon. So before we close the video off, I just want to answer a couple of frequently asked questions. Who actually am I and what do I do? Well, my name is Will. I run a computer company. I also do some music work and video stuff for people here and there. Yeah, so this is just kind of a bit of a side gig for me, the whole YouTube thing. I will be investing in some better audio. I'm currently filming on an iPhone 14 Pro, but I feel like I'm going to need one of those Rode Wireless Go mics, a lav mic of some sort, shotgun mic, something. So not straight away, but the audio will be improving as and when I can afford to buy some nice fancy new microphones. Oh, here's a common one. Why don't I burn the car down to the ground or scrap it? No, I won't do that. I'm now going to build the car up and make it work just to spite the people that have left those comments. So enjoy me having fun. And if you don't like it, well, hey, stick around to watch anyway, because I suppose that adds to the viewing figures. Just remember, folks, even the negative comments count towards the algorithm and making the video get more views. So another question I've had is, where on earth did I find a car like this and how much did I pay for it? Basically, I found it through a friend of a friend type scenario. I spoke to the son of the previous owner of the vehicle, who sadly passed away, and basically he just wanted me to get it off his land because it was going to be quite a hassle for him to do it, and I have done that. So far I've pretty much paid just for the transport of the vehicle and a couple of other bits and bobs, but if people are interested, what I may do towards the end of the project is a full price breakdown of exactly what's cost what I've had to spend to get it up and going. Yeah, it's quite a rarity that these things happen, but I'm very fortunate and I'm very glad to be able to share everything with you. Some other people have asked, is this my first time making YouTube videos? No, it is not. I made YouTube videos many years ago for my own kind of technology and some car stuff. I regularly make videos on a channel for our work here, which is doing kind of musical instrument gear review and equipment and things like that. So I do a little bit of that. I might put that in the description if that's interesting to you, but probably not. And lastly, how frequently will I be making videos? Now, I touched on that briefly, going back to the this isn't my job thing, but they will be as often as I can. And I said, Barney will be making some videos as well, and we'll probably have some other guests and things. We've got lots of exciting stuff to show you over the next few months. So stay tuned, and those videos will be coming as soon as we can get them out. So for now, thank you very much, everybody, for watching. I have been Will, and our social media links will be in the description below. Yet again, all comments are welcome, and just let me know what you think, and yeah, we'll go from there. See you in the next one.